Aloha! Sorry for the interruption of the fifth series of our podcast. Welcome to Legends, a limited number of episodes featuring iconic surfers, shaper of our surf history. We hope you're going to enjoy them. I have to say, it was a true honor for me to interview them. Hello again, welcome to the third episode of our Legends series. Today with us from California, 1977 World Surf Champion Shaun Tomson. We discuss with him about his amazing career, being such an inspiration for many people, and much more. Hello, Mr. Tomson. Welcome to the show. Where are you today?
Alessandro, it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me. I'm speaking from my new home in Santa Barbara in California. It's like a little suburb of Santa Barbara. It's called Montecito. So it's a nice little suburb. And we're here we actually haven't moved into our house yet, but we have a really lovely garden here. And it's all, it's like my wife's going to create like a paradise here.
Definitely. So looking forward in a few years' time, there will be like a totally different outlook of the garden, I guess. So. Today we're going to talk about many things about you as a surfer, but as well you as an author of books and more. But the first question that I would like to ask you today is, in your opinion, what is the most important thing in surfing?
For me, I've always thought that the most important feeling or the most important thing is to maintain that feeling of stoke. I mean, I can still remember the first wave I got, like 1965. I stood up on that little 4'6" board for the first time, and I got that amazing sensation. And I think that's a sensation that sort of keeps driving us to paddle back out when we've had a big wipeout or when it's cold and it's windy and we don't really feel like getting out there. And I think we need to just think back to that moment that attracted us to surfing, and it can change our perspective, change our day when we're having a bad day, and we just think about that feeling of stoke. It's important, I think, for a surfer, and it's important to share that too. I mean, I've devoted my life in the last 16 years to sharing that stoke, sharing that feeling, sharing that enthusiasm and optimism for life. But it all starts and ends with stoke.
Yeah, I see your point. That incredible energy that we all have with us when we surf. No matter how good are we, right? It doesn't. If you are a pro surfer or just like surfer that has the possibility to go on the weekend, or even if you are like a surfer from a pool, right? Because maybe you don't have ocean next to you.
Stoke is not related to ability level in any way, shape, or form. The stoke I got when I jumped up on a board for the first time, and I mean, I was a brand new surfer. Yeah, the stoke that I get today and the stoke I got when I first stood up on a board in 1965 is the same, and it's not related to ability level in any way, shape, or form. And I think that there's a rarity there that in most sports you have to be able to be at a relatively high standard to get that unbelievable sensation and feeling of elation. Some psychologists call it a state of flow, and they believe it can really be only achieved by experts. But in surfing, you don't need to be an expert to achieve that wonderful state and that feeling of being stoked. It's very rare, and as surfers, we're very lucky.
Yeah, of course. And then definitely, if you say so, that you are a world champion surfer, then definitely I would never be try that level. So I would only comment mine. But of course, the said from you, it has a totally different meaning. You were just telling me a little bit about the first time that you started to surf, but I'm interested in your first real proper surfboard. What was that? And by any chance, do you still have it?
No, I don't have my first surfboard. So the first little board that I stood up on was like a little 4'6" mass-produced board that my dad bought for me. My first real surfboard was 8'8" long with 4 stringers and a big red fin. that I could barely carry, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. When my father showed me this surfboard, it was incredible. And I think for all surfers, when you get that first surfboard, it has this, it's magic. It's magical.
Yes.
And I think that's what surfboard shapers do. They really create magic. And yesterday I spoke to two of the most famous surfboard shapers in the world. I was at a conference and I brought them in to discuss surfboard design. One is Matt Biolos, who made the first gold medal surfboard for Carissa Moore, who won the Olympics. And the other one was Tim Patterson. He made the first gold medal board for men's for Italo Ferreira, who won the gold medal. So it was wonderful to talk to them. And I said that, you know, for every surfer, there's that quest for that magic board.
Exactly.
To find that magic board. And thinking about it now, and in answer to your question, that it's very hard to find that magic board, but for every surfer, I think that first board is a magic board, because that's the board that got them up. And I wish I had that first little red surfboard of mine.
You remember who shaped that?
Well, there was a mass-produced board.
No, yeah, but the one with the four-stringer was.
Yeah, the four-stringer one was shaped by a guy called Max Wetland, a legendary South African surfboard shaper. He was was one of the top brands in South Africa, and eventually my father bought the brand.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. My father loved surfing, and you know, he was an entrepreneur. So ultimately, he could see how stoked I was about surfing. And imagine that he goes on to buy the brand, and then he goes on to create the world's longest running surf contest. So my father was very stoked.
I can imagine. Wow, fantastic.
My father had been, in his youth, he'd surfed. In fact, he was a champion swimmer and was hoping to represent his country in the Olympic Games, the 1948 Olympic Games in London. And then while he was surfing on a little wooden surfboard, he was very badly attacked by a shark.
Wow.
And that destroyed his swimming career. So can you imagine that he was like 21 years old, and you know his career was over because it really ripped up his right arm. Then he killed him. But he never lost this great love for the sea and the ocean and surfing, and imparted that onto me. So I was a very lucky young boy in that regard, that had a father who loved surfing, loved the business associated with surfing, and loved getting me stoked and helping many, many other surfers around South Africa get stoked too, and around the world, by creating the world's longest running surf contest, pro surf contest.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, like for such a tragic accident that happened to him, but he, as you said, he kept the stoke, right? So he's
he turned that tragedy into something special. And I think, you know, subconsciously, when I had a tragedy and my wife and I lost our beautiful 15-year-old son, I think he showed me a path forward by his actions and by his hope and optimism and enthusiasm, that you can paddle back out again to get the next wave, that you can have hope in life no matter what tough and tragic circumstances might befall you, that it's important to maintain hope even in situations that might seem hopeless.
I'm so sorry for your loss. I didn't want to raise this topic during the podcast.
I think it's a very important part of my life, and I think I talk about it because I think it can help people, especially in the context of COVID. You know, the world has been impacted so severely. Many people have lost loved ones and friends. Many people have had their businesses impacted. And I really encourage this feeling of hope. How can you find hope in these circumstances? And I think for surfers, we all have that metaphor, and we all are hopeful because we always paddle back out for that next wave. And in that process is a lot of hope.
And what advice would you give? I mean, I have two kids myself. They're very young, 3 and 2. So it's the time of my life that I don't sleep very much, and I'm getting up very early. But which advice would you give for people like you that suffer such tragedies of losing somebody so dear, what would you say to them to find their strength back, or to find the willing to live, let's say?
You know, about an hour before I lost my son, maybe 2 hours, I spoke to him over the phone because he was in South Africa, my old school. And he read me this beautiful essay that he'd written in school about tube riding, about riding inside the tube. And one of the lines in the essay that he'd written was, "The light shines ahead." So you can imagine if you're inside the tube and you're looking down and it gets dark as you get deeper inside the tube and you think you're going to wipe out, and you're aiming for that light that shines ahead. And I think it's a great metaphor for anyone that's suffered tragedy, is to know that fundamentally there is light that shines ahead, that tomorrow the sun will rise. But in that time of very deep and dark sadness, I think for me, the first stage is one has to be gentle with oneself and with others. And the hardest thing to do is accept the finality of that situation, is to accept the reality of it. And that can happen in days, that can happen in weeks, it can happen in months, but there's no time. There's no sort of specific time that one has to follow. Some people accept the finality, and it's not like you accept it and then you can move forward. It's you accept the finality, and that's just one part of the process of dealing with a loss. A lot of people find that the love from friends and family really helps them, and it helped me. I think it helps you. It's like a life raft. I think reconnecting back to your faith, whatever that might be, or to your spiritual practice, whether you're a Catholic, Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, whatever that is, the faith and that connectivity to the bigger universe and to God, or whoever you pray to, I think helps you a lot. And then what helped me too was helping others. It's amazing when you help others and you get involved with worthwhile projects that can help others. Not only does it take your mind away from the loss, but just helping others helps you. So I did quite a few projects during my tough times I was experiencing. I made a film called Busting Down the Door, which was really an inspirational movie. I released a book and promoted a book called Surface Code. So those are the sort of little things that I have helped, that I have found that helps me. But everyone has a different journey through darkness. But if you think that the light shines ahead and you have that hopeful attitude that one day things will be better, and the sun will rise again. The sun will rise again. I promise. And I say that to anyone who's been through a dark time, the sun will rise again.
Thank you for sharing this. It's very, very important, and coming from somebody that had tragic experience like you had, in
Thank you thank you for giving me the opportunity. And then one last thing too, which I forgot, which I think is very, very, very important, and that is to be absolutely forgiving to yourself, and forgiving to someone else. There can be no blame in loss, and if you forgive, it just clears away any bitterness, and you can't live with this bitterness that's sort of enveloping you, because that will keep you in the dark, and you'll get into this downward spiral that will be endless if you keep blaming yourself, you keep blaming others. It's like just forgive. And I do a lot of presentations now. I speak to a lot of people in all sorts of fields, drug rehabilitation clinics, prisons, large corporations, schools, universities. And everyone, it's called writing your code. Everyone writes 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. It's like your personal manifesto of purpose. And one of the most clearing and one of the most cathartic statements that people can make is, I will forgive, or I will forgive myself. And you can see when people write this or when they make this statement, it's like 1,000 pounds or 500 kilograms of weight have been lifted off their shoulders. It's a very, very powerful feeling to just, I will forgive.
Wow, very powerful. Yes, I totally agree with you. And for you being there with all these people and share your experience, but also have their experience share with you, it's kind of therapeutic, in both ways, right? Because it's
both ways. Exactly, you're 100% correct. That's why I'm saying that for people that have been suffering, have been through a hard road, is when you help others, it is like therapy both ways. It helps the individual and it helps me too. So giving and helping others is a very powerful, positive therapeutic force.
So how did you create the code? Okay, or the code is also the title of your book, right? The Power of I Will. And then you have also the Surfer's Code, the 12 simple lesson for riding through life, right? But how did you come up with this idea of the code? I read about it. It's all about positivism, right? Positive spirit, isn't it?
Yeah, it all came from surfing. It's your podcast called The Temple of Surf, and surf is almost like a religion. It has this incredible spirituality and culture to it. And many years ago, I got a call from a guy that I had known who started Surfrider Foundation. It's the biggest and most important surfing environmental group in the world. And I'd become the first ambassador for the group back in the 80s when they started. And he phoned me up after I'd been working with the organization for a long time, and after I'd moved to the United States, and my wife and I had started a new company called Solitude, and it was based right across the road from Rincon, which is a very, very famous surfing break here in California. And he said it's facing an environmental challenge, Rincon. All the homeowners were connected up to, they call it, septic tanks. It's like a hole in the ground. When you flush the toilet, all the excrement flows into into this hole in the ground. And then when it rained, the water table would rise and it would overflow into a river right near Rincon and would pollute the river and ultimately the surf break. So he said, let's solve this problem. He said, and I want you to help me solve the problem. And I said, well, Glenn, this is a huge problem. This is like a $30 million problem. He said, well, I'm going to give you a budget of $100 to help solve the problem. And he said, I'm going to bring a group of children down to the beach, and I'm going to bring the media and the local government officials and the water board. And, we want to raise awareness of the problem. And I think we can do it through kids, but you've got to inspire the kids. Okay. So I went home and thought, like, what can I do for $100 to inspire this group of children that he was bringing to the beach? And I picked up a sheet of paper and I wrote 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. And it was the basic fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life. And every line began with I will. I will always paddle back out, which is a simple concept about perseverance, resilience, hope, optimism. I will never turn my back on the ocean. It made me think of my dad and how he'd been attacked by a shark, but he loved the ocean and he never turned his back on the ocean. And I will take the drop with commitment, about how one has to commit to the wave, one has to commit to life. And so it was 12 metaphors. And I wrote it very quickly in like 15 or 20 minutes. And I printed them up on a little plastic card. Okay. And I printed up 100 cards. It cost me $100. And I gave them out to the children that came down to the beach. And then also gave them out to the officials and the government people. And everyone loved this concept of a code. and how it was pure and it came from surfing and it was for everyone. And ultimately, we solved the environmental problem. It took a few years, but the codes became very popular, the cards. And we started putting the card into the pocket of our clothing and the pocket of our board shorts. And people would just get this little code. And then ultimately, people would phone me up and say, hey, Shaun, why don't you come and talk to my company or talk to my community group or my school about a code? So at one of them, I met a guy called Patrick Moser, and he said, Shaun, I think this would make a great book. And we wrote a book together, my first book called Surfer's Code, which was 12 chapters, like the code had 12 lines. And the book became popular. And then I was surfing at Rincon one day after the book was released. And a guy paddled up to me and he said, hey, Shaun, do you want to come and talk to my school here in Santa Barbara? We've only got a small school, 80 students. Come and talk at my school. So I went along and spoke at the school. And when I was talking to the students, I said, Surfer's Code was my code that I wrote. What about your code? Why don't you write your own code? Just like I wrote Surfer's Code in 15 or 20 minutes, write your code and send it to me. And about a week later, I got back 80 students times 12, 960, nearly 1,000 lines of code.
Wow.
And the first line of code I got back from a student was, I will be myself. And you know, I had lost Matthew. So Matthew played a dangerous game that he'd heard about at school. And this kid was saying, I will be myself. And she was like, I will not be a victim of peer pressure. I will not be pushed around. I will not be victimized. I'll not be, but I'll be myself. And I just thought it was so powerful. And then the kids wrote these beautiful lines, very, very impactful, very emotional, very inspirational. So as soon as I got these back and I read them, I immediately phoned up Patrick Moser, my co-author on Surfer's Code, and I said, hey, let's write another book to empower positive decision-making amongst kids. And every chapter title will be from a kid. I will have faith. I will have hope. With the very first chapter title being, I will be myself, like the very first line of code I ever got back. So we wrote the book and it became popular. And that's how it happened. It just came from surfing and then it came from kids. And now hundreds of thousands of people around the world write their own codes. When I do these big events, big businessmen, people in prison, rehab clinics, people in very poor schools, students, everyone just writes their code. So it's not my code now. It's everyone's code, and everyone can write their 12 lines. And that code has really become a way for people to define their purpose and activate hope and also activate connectivity with others. Because what I do is when I do these big events and people write their codes, everyone can see everyone else's codes.
Oh, wow.
So people can see that we're all very similar, that we might be different, we might be from different nationalities, we might have different religions, we might have different political affiliations, but we very much the same. And basically, there are only two things in life that we want. There's only two things. Essentially, when you read all the codes, people don't write, I will be a billionaire or I will make $1 million. They don't write that. They write the best part of the human spirit. So while everyone writes beautiful words and everyone writes different codes, we all only write two lines. The one line we write is, I will be better. People want to be better tomorrow than they were today. They just want to be better. They want to pray more. They want to be more loving. They want to be kinder. They want to be more empathetic. They want to be better listeners. They want to be lifelong learners. People want to be better. And number two, people want to help other people be better. So people want to help. They want to give. They want to be mentors. They want to teach others. They want to be inspirational. So that's the meaning of life. Are we better? I'll help others be better. And for me, the understanding all came from one place, came from the surf, came from my temple.
True. But you see, the things that are the most simple, if you want, like take a piece of paper and write 12 lines, are the most powerful and meaningful, because at the end, you talk truth and people perceive truth with no filter, right? It's not like an articulation or something. It's just you talking straight from your experience, from yourself, to people that perceive your experience. And I like the fact that everybody shares in front of everybody, because that goes into back to the kind of therapeutic part we were talking before, right? When that weight comes off, and when they express their I will in front of all other people, they take a commitment towards.
Yeah, it's accountability too. Make a commitment publicly, and they've written about it in the science literature. They even quoted my process, which is pretty cool, you know,
Yes.
to see that even the psychologists realize that this process of sharing. I mean, they've studied my method. That this process of sharing is it's very therapeutic. It does create commitment. It does create accountability, and it does create that interpersonal engagement, you know. And through COVID, we've been like split up. You know, we were for so long, we were under quarantine, and, you know, there were so many things we couldn't do together. And it's really affected people, I think, in a very harsh way. And I've been doing a lot of events, and it really has helped people, and it stokes me up a lot.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think it's again, to see that your idea created something for the people around you. It's amazing thing, you know. It's just so rewarding, you know, beyond money, beyond anything else, right? And
Very much.
yeah, so yes, congratulations. You know, I don't, from my side, I'm just a little guy, but, you know, like, well done. It sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. So if I have to ask you, like, being an author of a book, what represents for you? I think now that you already talked to me about it, I kind of know the answer, but I wrote this question before our conversation. What means for you being an author of a successful book? And in your opinion, what is the most important thing in writing a book or being an author?
You know, I think I have a new book coming out.
Okay.
Next year. It's called The Surfer and the Sage.
Okay.
So I've written it with a guy who's a philosopher and a poet. There's a very famous prize here in the United States called the Pulitzer Prize. He's Pulitzer nominated.
Okay.
But he's a wonderful guy and very thoughtful. So it's called A Guide to Survive and Ride Life's Waves. So it's really a book to help people through hard times. And I think what a book does, the writing process, it really helps, I think, clarify your thoughts and focus your thoughts and organize your thoughts. Because, you know, we've got so much like happening in our minds, and, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I think that's why the code process has been effective with so many people, because it's simple, it's fast, it's focused, and you can clarify so many different thoughts and so many different goals and commitments and objectives in 12 lines. And I think writing a book is very much like that, is that you have to have this sort of like clarification, because you just start off with like a blank page. It's blank, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think back to, you know, when I wrote Surface Code, it was just, I just pulled out a sheet of paper and it was like blank. And then I wrote it down. And I think underlying this is that words have unbelievable power. Our words have great power. Our words have great power for good and evil. And science is transmitted from one person to another, and philosophy and spirituality and religion is transmitted from one person to another through words, through the power of words. And every time, you know, when I write a word, or anyone writes their own word, transmitting that is a massive responsibility because the words have great power. And it's been scientifically analyzed that, and Facebook has done a big analysis of 700,000 people, how what you type and what you send has great impact on the emotion of others. So there's an interesting psychological phenomenon. They call it emotional contagion. So it's not dissimilar to the viral contagion that we've experienced with COVID, but in many ways, it might even be more impactful because we can influence others' emotions by what we send out through Facebook, through Instagram, through Twitter, through LinkedIn, whatever your medium, whatever your platform is, you can influence others without them knowing. So all of us have this great power through words, through writing, and we have this great responsibility too, I think. And I think what's happened with the bombardment of social media and some of the recent statistics and data that Facebook have released is that Facebook can make you angry.
Of course.
And there's a lot of anger in the world right now. And I speak to friends of mine and they're successful and they got a lot of money, but they become very angry. And I think what's wonderful about surfing is you don't even have to catch a wave to get that experience of paddling out with that open horizon and sitting there and just waiting and being patient. It has this calming effect. And I think this calmness and this empathy and this kindness, we're in a war right now. We're in a war against anger. And I think surfing and writing your code, they're fundamental, powerful tools to help in this war against anger.
Yeah, I agree with you. And what actually, if you want to call them the elders of surfing, some of them are still with us, some of them they passed away. They were teaching us, or they are teaching us with the spirit of Aloha, and the transmission of it to the new generation, to see surf just like a sport that is very important, but to see it as a culture, as a way of living the life, as a way to share the Aloha with others, and it's very, very intense meaning that not everybody can explain easily, But when I spoke with, for instance, Fernando Aguirre, in charge of ISA, he told me, Alessandro, at the Olympics, they make surf a sport, but I really insisted to have a village, a surf village that anyway didn't happen because in Tokyo, unfortunately, everything was closed. Because I didn't want only to explain the world about the surf. A lot of people, they maybe didn't know this sport. I don't know, in China, other places. And I wanted to try to explain to them what is our culture, where we come from. And actually, this is this challenge for the Tahiti, for Los Angeles, and for whatever it does. And I think you were saying we need to select the word that we are using. And I think you are very right. And we need also to learn about transmit. That is not that easy as well, right? Because one thing is select the word, and one thing is making sure that the other people understand it.
Mm-hmm. No, very much so. I mean, surfing definitely has 4 dimensions: sport, culture, lifestyle, and also art form too. I think the actual process of what surfers do on the wave outside of competition and in competition too is very, very artistic and very balletic, like a ballet dancer or a painter. It's very, very much part of a self-expression. It's not like the principal determinant of success is like a sub 10-second 100-meter dash where style and the technique and look and aesthetic appeal are not part of the equation. There's just one benchmark. Surfing is not rewarded that way. Even in the competitive field, there's certainly the stylistic art, flow component along with the commitment and radical maneuvers. So it definitely crosses over from sport, lifestyle, art form.
Yeah.
It sort of has this multi-dimensional aspect to it.
Definitely. So let's go a little bit back to surf. We talked about many things already. What was the defining moment of your career? Was it the world title? Was another moment?
Yeah, I think there have been maybe a few defining moments for me. I think one was certainly competitively was perhaps winning the Gunston 500 when I was 17 years old, which was a contest my father started and became one of the biggest pro contests in the world, and certainly had the biggest spectator base. 30 or 40,000 people would come down to watch it. So that when I won that, I think I proved to myself that I could stand on the world stage. Then winning an event in Hawaii, which was the biggest event in the world at the time when I was a teenager, when I was 19. It was called the Hang 10 American Pro at Sunset Beach in 15-foot surf in maximum size, the Sunset Beach. And that was really important as a surfer to win in Hawaii. Winning the Pipeline Masters in 1975 when I just turned 20, when no one thought I had a chance because I was up against all goofy footers. And so it was a whole new way of riding the Banzai Pipeline. So I think that was an important moment for me. And then winning the world title a few years later. But from an art form perspective, I think my surfing at Pipeline, backside, my tube riding, which was for me the most artistic, spiritual, radical, committed aspect of my surfing, was reinventing the way tubes are ridden and just changing the way tubes are ridden, changing the line, inventing turning inside the tube. I think for me was really important. And then I think that was the most important aspect. So competitively, certainly there was some very important contests, but I think my surfing at the Banzai Pipeline and then on to riding inside the tube was sort of made me who I am as a surfer.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. In your career as a surfer, you met a lot of other surfers. Was there a meeting that was particularly meaningful for you?
Yeah, I would say for me, maybe meeting Rabbit Bartholomew.
Oh, wow.
And, Rabbit became a great friend and a great rival. And when he picked me up at the airport with Ian Cairns in 1974, and he took me down to Off the Wall, this famous beach that we all popularized and made famous. So we were similar spirits. We were very different as people. We had different styles, but we were very similar in that we could see that there was something special about surfing and about our relationship and about our competitive relationship. And it was very, very special to meet him. And we were completely, we were like opposite ends of the spectrum. He was like a scruffy ruffian street urchin, and I came from a relatively affluent family, and I was studying economics at university. But he was a deep thinker, Rabbit, even though he didn't have a traditional, university schooling. He was incredibly, maybe one of the deepest thinkers I've ever met, and we just connected, and I think together we became a force.
I like that. Together we became a force. Fantastic. It's great picture in my mind. Okay, you're keeping yourself super busy, talking, doing online now because of COVID. There is restrictions, so movies, books, surfing, a lot of things. You just told me that you wrote a book that will be released. Is there any other things in the drawer that you are preparing that you like to share?
There are two things. One of them is I'm working on a very cool surf park project.
Okay.
So this is a project that I'm hoping is going to create a positive wave in the community in which it's built. And it's really going to be used as a vehicle, both to generate a profit, but more importantly, to activate purpose amongst every person that goes there. So it's really going to be connected to the Surface Code. And also it's really going to be connected to my old brand that I started when I was in my early 20s called Instinct.
Okay.
I had a surfing brand that I started when I was 20, in my early 20s. And I called it Instinct because for me, the best moment in surfing was riding inside the tube. And the best tubes happen when you're riding on Instinct. And I went on to sponsor Tom Carroll to 2 world titles, Barton Lynch to a world title in 1988, sponsored many other amazing surfers, and created a brand that was sold in 13 countries. So we're working on, the brand has started again in a very small way in Australia. And we want to sort of create this resurgence of the Instinct brand and maybe tie it into the surf park. We're not 100% sure, but between, resurrecting Instinct as a pure brand and the surf park, and then my speaking and educational outreach, and the new book, and it's keeping me busy. Always, we've tried to create a dramatic version of Busting Down the Door with a big screen, but that's been a hard project. And we have had some interest, but I've never been able to get across the finish line there. But at the moment, I'm really focused on how can I create maximum impact through surfing for people, especially for people in organizations and especially for youth.
Definitely. It's as we said at the beginning, is very rewarding for you personally as well. So I guess as a priority among all the projects you're working on, there's quite a lot. Anyway, so we're gonna finish our interview with a short question and answer session. So please answer the first thing that comes up to your mind. Okay, we try this game. The best surfboard that you ever ridden?
The 7-footer that was shaped by Spider Murphy, on which I won the world title as well, and had some of the best tube rides of my life. 7 foot, 19 inches wide, 3 inches thick, 11-inch tail, 12 3/4-inch nose.
Wow. And you
single to double concave. It was a single to double concave when it was the only single to double concave in the world. Spider Murphy invented the single to double concave, which is really now the standard for all boards in the world.
And where is that board? Do you have it again, or?
That board broke. That board was made in 1977. So it, I had it through the season, and then it broke. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
You
cannot avoid, but it would have been nice to have that board.
Yeah, that was magic. That was a magic board. A magic board.
Okay, your favorite shaper of all time?
Spider Murphy.
That was
in South Africa.
One after the other. Really easy. Personal question: your favorite song?
Low Spark of High Heel Boys by Traffic.
Okay. Your favorite surf spot? Maybe I know the answer.
Jeffreys Bay. Without a doubt, Jeffreys Bay.
Okay.
Super Tube. Yeah. Super Tubes at Jeffreys Bay.
Your favorite surfer of all time?
Kelly Slater.
A legendary one, of course. And the last question is a little bit unusual. I ask everybody on the show, and has nothing to do with surf. Don't ask me why I came up with this question. I don't remember. The question is, I would like to know your best relationship advice.
Be forgiving. Be kind.
It's already enough. Be forgiving and be kind is a good base for great relationship. And thanks a lot, Mr. Tomson, for being on the show with me today. And I look forward to talk to you very, very soon.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, and to everyone out there that's listening. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you can always just email me. You can go to my website, shauntomson.com, or you can go to shauntomson@yahoo.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to hear from people. And thanks for having me, Alessandra. Stay stoked, eh?
Of course. Bye-bye. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.thetempleofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!